So my name is Filip Rakowski. I'm a co-founder and CTO of Allokai. Allokai was previously called Vue Storefront. Maybe you know Vue Storefront. It's a famous, apparently, startup from Wrocław, Poland here. And we used to do a lot of Vue.js. At some point, we also switched to also doing React, and also we stopped doing only storefronts. We actually do a bunch of things around e-commerce, still related to frontends, but definitely not only storefronts, so we had to change the name. And here we are with Allokai. And what is this talk about? The title might give you some spoilers, but in general, what I want to talk about is a problem that a lot of companies has in different flavors, not exactly in the flavor that I will be showing here, but I think the problems outlined here are quite universal, and probably all of you face this kind of issue on some surface at some point in your career, which means what if we are building application or a bunch of applications that are very similar in a specific domain? And e-commerce, this is what I am doing, is an example of such a domain. So you could imagine like we have a company that has a lot of brands, different brands, and in reality, like every e-commerce store is almost identical. Like they differ in some degree, but like probably 80% of the logic is shared. So imagine we have 20 brands and then 20 stores. That's weird, right? So we'll be talking about how to turn something like this into something like this, short. And to, talk about some real use case, I will anonymize it, obviously, but we had some customers that had this problem. We actually have a lot of customers that have this problem. And the solution that I will be showing is actually proven in battle. It is working quite well. And I will show you, some demo at the very end on how it works. But let's imagine we have a company called Capybara, Capybara Fashion. It's like a very old image generated in ChatGPT some time ago. I think like fashion, it almost did it right. So we have this wonderful brand, Capybara Fashion, and Capybara Fashion is a brand from UK. And they have a UK site. And they are doing incredibly well because obviously, everyone loves capybaras, right? So at some point, they also open a branch in US. But in US, they have a little bit different inventory, a little bit different kind of customers, a little bit different promotions, different teams are working with this. So they have a separate site in US. So they have two e-commerces right now. And they are doing well in US as well. The flow of money is growing. They are also seeing that they have some people ordering actually from other countries as well. So they think like, why not? Let's do the expansion. And they also start Japan branch. So they have 3 e-commerces right now. The Capybara company has 3 e-commerces right now. And for quite some time, when they were very young, they had this competitor called Butterfly Fashion. But this competitor never lived to, what Capybara became. Like they were struggling a little bit. They had some financial issues. Apparently, they were laundering money, and generally, they were not going very well. So Capybara Fashion decided to acquire this company. And this is the reality, actually. Like in many cases, when we work, especially with a big enterprise customers, we have a situation when a company acquires a different company with all their inventory, like technical inventory, which means like all the applications that they have. And if they're going through multiple acquisitions like this, it is creating a quite big depth of multiple applications. So Butterfly Fashion also had 3 branches. So right now we have 6 applications, right? And also those applications, they're running on a little bit different e-commerce system. So Capybara was using Shopify for small businesses. Butterfly Fashion was using SAP Commerce, a little bit different, more enterprise e-commerce platform. So we have 6 stores, 3 are running on Shopify, 3 are running on SAP Commerce Cloud. Just to add into this, maybe they also have a mobile applications. They probably have mobile applications. So all of those things, like if you think a little bit about the business logic, purely about the business logic, they serve exactly the same purposes. Like 80% of the business logic of all of this is more or less the same. There are some slight differences on the UI, obviously, because we have different touch points. Sometimes some slight differences on the surface of the functionality, but in general, like all of them, have a product page, category page, checkout, cart, this sort of things, the same functionalities. Yet we have 8 teams maintaining different applications. Imagine how hard it is to roll out a new feature. Imagine how hard it is to even do some, refactoring. Back in my development days, when I was a developer, I was working in a different software house, and then we had a project. And in this project, actually, I was working with this guy, Anastase. And they had this problem, like they had a mobile application. I think part of the application was in React, and the other application was in Angular. And there was like a constant problem, like with syncing different designs, all this kind of stuff. Like there is a lot of unnecessary discussions. There is a lot of unnecessary work that has to be done. While it could be smart and think like, okay, maybe we could have like a common core, ship like 80% of the feature once, and then just adjust this 20% that is specific to either a region or like a touch point, like a mobile application, kiosk, something like this, right? So the customer that came to us, the customers that are coming to us, they're having a huge headache with that. Because imagine sometimes some of them, they have 15, 16 brands. And all of them have exactly this problem. Like sometimes they were launching in separate places, different e-commerce stores. Sometimes they were acquiring different companies. And they're paralyzed. They're really paralyzed. Because the problem that they have is not only about increasing the costs. Obviously, the costs are a problem. The problem is shipping literally anything is a nightmare because it requires a lot of coordination. So, the best approach to solve this problem is either, okay, we live with the fact that every single branch, every single application is a separate entity, and we are doomed to this, or it is not even worth rolling out a new feature because the cost of rolling this feature is so big and the pain is so big that we just won't be doing this. So this is a kind of technical debt, like architectural debt, that can really kill the business at some point, if not addressed properly. So what we want to do to solve this is obviously we want to take reusability to the extreme, right? So again, we want to figure out, okay, how to reuse this 80% of the common logic, but still be able to literally do anything with the rest. So change the UI, change the backend platform, change the way how it looks, add some custom features, etc., etc. So these would be the requirements, and these were actually the requirements that we had for the solution that we have implemented. So obviously we want to be able to use different backend integrations for the same code base. Shopify and SAP Commerce in this particular case. Secondly, we want to be able to include some logic that is specific to only a single brand or store, because there could be some things that are only specific to UK or something that are only specific to US or something like this. These days, you do a lot of this stuff for CMSs, but sometimes these are the actual functionalities. Obviously, you want to deploy and scale it independently, so we want one code base, but separate applications. Obviously, we want to style each store and brand separately because Butterfly and Capybara, they have a little bit different brand designs, as you could imagine. And we want to use as much of code as possible. This is the main requirement of this. So how the solution will look like. So I'll give you a high-level overview, and then we will see a very simple, I hope, repository, which kind of bakes all of those problems in and shows how to solve them independently. And this is a solution that actually works for our customers. Like, you will see that from the, and I think this is why it is beautiful. It's simple from the technical perspective. It really doesn't require almost any implementation. It's more like a conceptual architectural idea, but it is super powerful, but obviously has some flaws like every solution. So what we'll be using is inheritance, like a file-based inheritance. Why? Because it is a great and universal solution. Pretty much any kind of problem that you will come up with, you can actually solve through inheritance. Sometimes when we have a big chunks of code that we would like to overwrite, like we just need to break the smaller ones and use inheritance for the smaller ones. The problem with inheritance is that it works very well if you have like one level of inheritance. It works okay-ish if you have 2 levels of inheritance. If you have 3 levels of inheritance, it's a nightmare, and everything above this is a nightmare. So there used to be an e-commerce platform called Magento. I don't know if anyone here worked with here. I know that at least one person. And they had this wonderful concept of like having a base team, like a common team, and a team on top, on top, on top. And they had this inheritance as well, and it was a nightmare to even figure out what is coming from what. So like I think it's a wonderful solution, but the flaw of inheritance is that if you apply multiple levels of inheritance, the developer experience is terrible. Just don't do this. By the way, I will be talking about Nuxt layers here. So like probably you know this feature from Nuxt.js, but obviously there could be some people who don't use the newest version of Nuxt, or maybe stuck with Nuxt 2, or maybe you're just using Vue.js because this problem is applicable to other things like dashboards, for example. Dashboards often don't need Nuxt at all because they're guided by some login pages in front of them. So you don't need SSR and all these beauties of Nuxt, though I would recommend using Nuxt. So I wrote an article some time ago, it is already 3 years, almost perfectly 3 years ago, on Vue School, called Team Inheritance in Nuxt.js, when I'm actually showing how to do this pre-Nuxt layers, long time before Nuxt layers came out. And I will tell you more or less how this works. You will see it is ridiculously simple. And you can apply it to any kind of application. I also released something like this for Astro. It is called Astro Layers. It's an NPM package. You can look at it. But this script pretty much works for any kind of project. So first of all, what we want is, what we have here is like one level of inheritance. And we have 3 directories. One directory is a base theme, so like the base files, something that every new flavor, every new e-commerce will be inheriting and overriding. The second one is new, which is just a new application. And a good application for this also in normal apps is like maybe you have a special theme for, I don't know, winter holiday or something like this. Like this is also where it will work quite well. And we have a target. Target is a directory where we are compiling both directories together and overriding some from base to some from new. So it is almost like we're having a target directory, we're copy-pasting from base, then copy-pasting from new, overriding files, that's it. And this is the script really. This is really the script that is doing that. Here, like it's a Nuxt module, it can just also be a function, it can be Vite plugin. But obviously this is a little bit problematic from the perspective that like every time we change something, we'll have to run the script, right? So we could use a library like Capybara, for example, that will be watching our files. And every time, first of all, like when we are starting the project, we are putting all of those files in the target directory. Then we are watching them, and every time we add a file, we change a file, or like we delete a file, it's automatically copying it over. And the reality, if you want to work with this project, you just go to /target, you run yarn dev, and it works, right? Because it's pretty much a normal Nuxt.js project. And this is this beautiful universality, because it doesn't have any complicated system. It is just copying files. So whatever kind of linking, whatever kind of TypeScript stuff, etc. you have, it will work because these are just all the files in this directory, right? So this is for those who don't use Nuxt layers in the code table using Nuxt layers. So what we will have is, based on this, we will have 3 directories. We'll have a base directory with a base store, Capybara directory with a Capybara store, and a butterfly store with a butterfly store. Both of them will be inheriting from base. And based on the files, obviously, sometimes we like to override some of the files. For example, the Capybara, maybe we want to have a different product page or product component. So then, like, we're just overriding the one from base. Now with the styling, I know there are many Tailwind fans, but unfortunately, Tailwind is not the best fit for inheritance because it is tightly coupled with the template, which means that every time you would like to override any kind of styling, you would pretty much have either to, just write a custom styles with apply or this sort of stuff, which is a little bit ugly and kind of against the Tailwind philosophy, or you will have to copy each component and override it like here, which kind of denies the purpose. It would be much better to just have a single CSS file. So for this particular use case, we tried. Believe me, we tried. Tailwind is not the most optimal solution, and I wouldn't recommend it. I would much more recommend just having some kind of a BEM methodology and then having a different CSS files in different separate files. I will show you later. So this is how it's going to look like. When we have a CSS file, it will be separated from the components. This way, we can actually style some components differently without overriding the core logic. Because the goal here is to have as few overrides as possible, to override as small chunks as possible. This will embrace the maximum reusability. Because obviously, if you have something like a product page, and the product page is just, 2,000 lines of code, and you want to override this, and you are copying this 2,000 lines of code, it's kind of not very reusable, because you will still have to modify a big chunks. Like, it's much better to break it into a smallest possible chunks, actually. Now, this is the cool thing, abstracting the APIs. And this is something we also have at Allokai. We call it unified data layer, but in reality, how it works is pretty much, a normalization of data. So we are coming up with some format. The front end is consuming this format, and then we are having a function that is translating the fields from pretty much any e-commerce platform into the fields that are consumed by the front end. Obviously, you don't map the whole data model. You map only the fields that you display on the front end and need on the front end. This way, it is working quite well, and you don't need to put that much work into this. So that's pretty much it about the theory. Do you get it, more or less? The idea? Yes? No? Do you listen? Cool. So let's see it in action. By the way, this is the picture time, because this is also on the repository, on a public repository. So if you would like to, see what I'm showing right now, play with it, maybe use it for some of your own use cases, you can just find it on my GitHub with Nuxt/layers/multisite. Okay, see, someone is making a picture. Okay, so now the fun part, the project itself. So I have it running already, and what we have here is pretty much a base store. This is how the base store looks like. This is how base component look like. And in here we just have a global CSS file where we are specifying the accent color CSS variable. We are telling what font are we using, and we also have a separate CSS file for the product page that has some styles, and a product component that is linking the product page. We're also fetching data from API product, so we have a server route for this. And here we just have a mock. So this is actually the format that is being consumed. So what the product page is expecting a product object that has a name, price, description, and image properties. So this is what we have. And what we would like to do is we would like to be able to run any other store like Butterfly or Capybara with some overrides. Like, look, like in Butterfly, we're overriding the global CSS, we're changing the color. In Capybara, we're doing exactly the same. We're also fetching data from different platforms. So what we would like to do is we would like to do something like this. I have an env file where I'm saying deployed store. So whenever we are deploying, we're just setting this environmental variable. Right now it's base. Let's change it to Capybara. Obviously, there will be some error. And I'm doing here and dev again, because this browser is not refreshing. And we're seeing Capybara. Exactly the same with Butterfly. So we're going here, we're saying Butterfly. And we will have Butterfly. And I will show you how it's all done in a moment. And you see Butterfly doesn't only have a different image, doesn't only have a different, description, name, etc., but also has this unique buy now button. So it also differentiates a little bit on a feature. All of this, like both stores differentiate from the base with the content, with their accent color. In here, we also have a separate feature. So how it's done, how it's made, right? So first of all, we saw this base application. We saw that we have this base product with this format. Now, in Butterfly, what we are doing is we're adding a new feature, which is pretty much this button. So what we are doing is we're actually copying over this product page and just modifying the CSS, modifying the HTML part, or the template part, actually. So this is how we're doing this. Obviously, if this file will get too big, it would be wise to maybe break it. It would be wise to maybe extract the product page to a separate component that has some slots and just put some things into those slots and just use it. There are different ways of doing that, but my suggestion is that if it gets any bigger than that, it's probably not a good candidate to copy over. Maybe use it, as a separate component. Maybe have some utility component library. Maybe just break it into a smaller components. Now, what about the product? So this is a Shopify product model. At least I believe it is, because I used ChatGPT to generate it. So as you can see, it is majorly different from what we need. So as I told you, what we are doing actually is we are having our Shopify product, and then we have our function that is normalizing it. So we're taking a Shopify product, normalized product, and we are just changing it to this data model. This way, we actually here, don't need to change anything in the component, and it is displaying the proper. It is displaying it without any errors. The same with Capybara. In Capybara, we also have like a Vendura product. Vendura is like an e-commerce platform, open source one, quite good, by the way. And here we are also normalizing the data model from Vendura to our common format. You see that we're not actually overriding the product component. We're just inheriting straight the product component from here, but yet with a different data model, this is displaying properly, right? Now, when it comes to the styling, we usually, a good common practice is that we have a global styles where we set things like, font, some accent colors and this sort of stuff. Plus, for every component, you also have a CSS file. I know it's not very elegant from the code perspective, but also we need to sometimes, make some sacrifices to make this architecture work properly. And now, how I am actually doing this magic switching? So how am I doing this? So in the Nuxt config, we have a magic field called extends, which is pretty much responsible for the order of Nuxt layers in here. And we're taking the environmental variable. And first of all, like depending on which store we have, we are taking the global styles to load. This ones, or this ones, or this ones. And when we talk about the inheritance itself, we're taking the base store always, and then depending on which wants to be deployed, we're just taking the store. And that's pretty much it. This is the whole system, and believe me or not, like these are super simple principles, but what they allowed us to do, they allowed us to make a very, very complex e-commerce applications, reuse really huge amount of common data. And as I said, it's more like a pattern rather than like a solution, because implementing something like Nuxt layers is ridiculously simple. But I think it really shows how file-level inheritance could be utilized to the extreme in this kind of projects, especially when you have projects that also have multiple touchpoints. Again, think about this for use cases like I have a mobile application, I have a kiosk application, I have a web application, maybe I have a B2B application for one customer, or maybe I have a different teams just for a single customer. Like in all of those cases, also regionalities, maybe with different regional, backend systems. This solution altogether, or some pieces of it, can be used to achieve different outcomes regarding reusability. And that's it. So thank you so much.